I was still breathing when my children began dividing
That's not
my
what she
estate.
told me about the house.
They
The house is
argued
part
over
of the
my
estate.
house,
We have to
my
sell.
savings, even the antique
I know
clock
you have
my
the
late
money. Where
husband
is it?
had
Stop
wound
lying
every
to me.
Sunday
It's
for
in the
40
study. I
years.
told you already. Get
I
it.
sat only a few feet away, listening as if
I
I
am
had
telling you,
already
that
become
house
a
belongs to
photograph
me.
on the
Dad
mantle.
promised it.
He said no
They
such
thought
thing.
my
You're just trying to
silence
cut us
meant
out.
weakness.
Read the will again.
They
It's
thought
clear
they
as
knew
day.
exactly what they would inherit. What none of them realized was that my husband Richard had hidden one final secret years ago, and that secret was about to change every one of their lives. If this story touches something in your heart, I'd love for you to stay with me until the end. Please like this video, subscribe if you enjoy heartfelt family stories, and share your thoughts in the comments. Most of all, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I always enjoy knowing who's sharing this journey with me across the world. The first time I fainted, I was standing in my kitchen holding a blue ceramic mug Richard had bought me on our 25th wedding anniversary. I remember the sound before I remember the fall. The mug hit the hardwood floor and shattered into 3 large pieces with little blue chips scattering under the cabinets like tiny broken pieces of sky. Then my knees gave way. I reached for the counter, missed it, and the next thing I knew, I was staring up at the ceiling fan listening to the refrigerator hum. For a moment, I thought Richard was calling my name. Paige. But Richard had been gone for 6 years. The voice belonged to my neighbor, Mrs. Clara Henderson, who had let herself in through the back door after hearing the crash. Clara and I had been friends for nearly 30 years. She was the kind of woman who noticed if your porch light stayed on too long or if your newspaper sat outside past breakfast. "Oh, honey," she whispered, kneeling beside me. "Don't move." "I'm fine," I said, though my voice sounded thin even to myself. "You are not fine. You're on the floor." That was Clara. Loving, blunt, impossible to argue with. The ambulance came 15 minutes later. By then I was sitting in a chair wrapped in a quilt, embarrassed more than frightened. The paramedic checked my blood pressure and asked if I had eaten that morning. I told him yes, though the truth was I had only had coffee and half a piece of toast. At 72, you learn that people hear your age before they hear your words. One night in the hospital turned into a parade of tests, questions wires, and beeping machines. The doctor said it was likely dehydration and low blood sugar. Nothing immediately dangerous, but he wanted me monitored overnight. I called Ethan first. He was my oldest child, my son, the boy who used to run through the backyard with grass stains on his knees and chocolate around his mouth. Now he was 48, a regional sales manager, with polished shoes, a sharp haircut, and a voice that always sounded like he was trying to close a deal. "Mom, why didn't you call sooner?" he asked. "I'm calling now." "You scared us. I scared myself a little." There was a pause. Then his voice lowered. "Where are your house keys?" I blinked. "My house keys, just in case. Vanessa and I should have a set. What if this happens again and no one can get in?" It sounded reasonable. That was always the danger with Ethan. His most controlling ideas arrived dressed as concern. "Clara has a spare," I said. "She's not family." That sentence settled coldly in my chest. Not family. Clara had sat beside me after Richard's funeral when my own children had gone home early because they were tired. Clara had brought soup when I had the flu. Clara had fixed my curtains when my hands were too stiff to thread the rod. But to Ethan, she was not family. "I'll think about it," I said. He exhaled. "Mom, please don't be stubborn." That word again. Stubborn. At my age, people used it whenever I did not surrender fast enough. Lauren arrived the next morning before I was discharged. My daughter came into the hospital room, wearing a cream-colored coat and carrying a designer purse I knew cost more than my first car. Lauren was 45, elegant, careful with her makeup, careful with her words, and careless with other people's feelings when she thought she was being practical. She kissed my forehead. "You look pale. I'm in a hospital gown under fluorescent lights. Nobody looks good here." She gave a small laugh, but her eyes were already scanning the room. My purse, my discharge papers, the plastic bag with my clothes. "Mom," she said gently, "have you been paying your bills on time?" I frowned. What kind of question is that? A normal one. You fainted alone in the kitchen. I fainted because I didn't eat enough breakfast. That's how it starts. How what starts? She sat beside my bed and placed her hand over mine. Her nails were pale pink, perfectly shaped. Little things, missed meals, forgotten bills, confusion. I'm not saying that's happening to you, but we should be prepared. I pulled my hand back. My bills are paid. I'm only trying to help. No, Lauren, you're trying to manage. Her face tightened, but only for a second. I can at least get access to your online banking. Just emergency access. There it was again. Access. Ethan wanted keys. Lauren wanted banking information. They had not asked if I was frightened. They had not asked if I needed someone to stay the night. They had not asked whether the fall had made me miss Richard so badly I could hardly breathe. They asked for access. By the time Ethan and Vanessa came to pick me up, I had already decided not to mention Lauren's question. I wanted to believe it was just poor timing. I wanted to believe fear made people awkward. Vanessa walked into the room with a bouquet of grocery store flowers and a smile so soft it looked practiced. She was beautiful in a cold way, with smooth blonde hair, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that measured everything. "Oh, Paige," she said, hugging me lightly. "You gave everyone such a scare." "I didn't mean to. Of course not. But this is a wake-up call." Ethan nodded as if they had rehearsed the phrase. "A wake-up call," he repeated. I looked from one to the other. "For what?" "For planning," Vanessa said. "You know, making sure everything is organized. Medical wishes, accounts, insurance, your will." My will. The word entered the room like another person. I looked at my son. "Did you drive here to take me home or to bury me?" His face flushed. "Mom, don't be dramatic." But I was not being dramatic. I was being honest. On the drive home, Ethan talked about safety upgrades, grab bars in the bathroom, a medical alert bracelet, motion lights. Then, as we turned onto Maple Ridge Lane, he said, "I still think I should hold on to a spare key. I told you I'd think about it. Thinking isn't a plan." "No," I said, looking out the window at the old sycamore tree in my front yard. "But neither is rushing me." He pulled into the driveway and parked behind my Buick. The house looked exactly as it always had. White siding, green shutters, flower beds sleeping under winter mulch. The porch swing Richard had built with his own hands. To anyone else, it was just an old house in a quiet Ohio neighborhood. To me, it was 43 years of marriage. It was babies coming home from the hospital, birthday candles, Christmas mornings, arguments, apologies, Richard's work boots by the back door, the smell of pot roast on Sundays. My whole life lived inside walls that had listened without judging. Mark arrived 15 minutes later. Lauren's husband did not come to hospitals unless someone important was dying, but he came to my house that afternoon with a measuring look in his eyes. "Glad you're home, Paige," he said. "Thank you, Mark." He stood in the entryway staring past me into the living room. "This place has great bones." I looked at him. "Excuse me, the house?" "They don't build them like this anymore. Original hardwood wide lot mature trees. Depending on the market, you'd be surprised what it could go for." The silence after that was so sharp even Vanessa looked down. I had just come home from the hospital still wearing the plastic bracelet around my wrist, and my son-in-law was pricing the roof over my head. Lauren touched his arm. "Mark, what I'm just saying, it's good to know." "Good to know?" That evening, after they all finally left, I stood alone in the kitchen and looked at the spot where the blue mug had broken. Clara had swept it up, but one tiny piece remained under the edge of the cabinet. I bent slowly, picked it up, and held it in my palm. A fragment of something Richard had given me. A fragment of a life they were already trying to divide. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Ethan. "Mom, please send me a photo of your house key so I can make a copy tomorrow. Easier for everyone." Before I could answer, another message came from Lauren. "Also, when you feel better, let's sit down and go over your accounts. No pressure, just responsible planning." Then Vanessa sent one. "Paige, do you remember where you keep your will?" Ethan says it might be outdated. I sat at the kitchen table and read all 3 messages twice. No pressure, just responsible planning. Outdated. Those words should have sounded caring. Instead, they sounded like footsteps outside a locked door. For the first time since Richard died, I felt unsafe in my own family. I did not reply to any of them. Instead, I walked to the hallway closet, reached behind a stack of old table linens, and pulled out the small gray lockbox Richard had insisted we keep. Inside were insurance papers, birth certificates, old savings bonds, and a sealed envelope from his attorney, Daniel Whitmore. I had not touched it in years. My fingers rested on the envelope, but I did not open it. Not yet. I only whispered into the quiet house, "Richard, what did you know that I didn't?" And for the first time all day, the silence did not feel empty. It felt like a warning, like 3 days after I came home from the hospital, Ethan called and said, "Mom, we're having dinner at your place Saturday." Not asking, telling. I was standing in the laundry room, folding one of Richard's old flannel shirts I still wore on cold mornings. My hands paused over the sleeves. At my place, I asked, "Yes, just family. You shouldn't have to cook, don't worry. Vanessa will bring something." "Lauren's making salad." "That sounds nice," I said, slowly. "It'll be good for everyone to sit down and talk." There it was. Talk. In my family, talk rarely meant conversation. It meant persuasion. It meant pressure wrapped in polite language. It meant someone had already decided what was best for me and only needed me to stop resisting long enough to agree. Still, I said yes. Maybe a part of me wanted to be wrong. Maybe I wanted to see my children at my table and feel foolish for doubting them. Maybe I wanted Saturday night to prove that fear had made me suspicious, that the hospital scare had unsettled all of us, that keys and accounts and wills were only clumsy expressions of love. So on Saturday, I cleaned the house. Not because it was dirty, because I needed something to do with my hands. I dusted the mantel where our family photographs stood in silver frames. Ethan at 8 years old, missing his 2 front teeth. Lauren in her high school graduation cap. Richard holding both children at Lake Erie Wind in his hair. Joy in his eyes. I paused at that picture longest. "You always knew people better than I did," I whispered to him. By 5:30, the house smelled of lemon polish and the roast chicken Vanessa had dropped off earlier in a foil pan. She had not stayed. She only placed it on the counter and said, "Ethan wants everything to feel easy tonight." Easy. That word made me nervous. They arrived at 6 sharp. Ethan came first, carrying a bottle of wine I knew he had chosen for the label, not the taste. Vanessa followed with mashed potatoes and that smooth smile of hers. Lauren came in with Mark behind her holding a bowl of salad and wearing the expression of a man touring a property before auction. Olivia came last. My granddaughter stepped through the door quietly, wearing jeans, a navy sweater, and concern she could not hide. At 23, Olivia had Richard's gentle eyes and Ethan's stubborn chin. She hugged me longer than anyone else did. "You okay, Grandma?" she whispered. "I am, tonight," I said. Her arms tightened before she let go. Dinner began almost beautifully. For the first 20 minutes, everyone behaved like a family from a greeting card. Ethan complimented the table settings. Lauren asked whether I needed another pillow for my chair. Vanessa told me I looked stronger. Mark said the chicken was excellent. Olivia sat beside me, serving me small portions before I could reach too far. I wanted to relax. I truly did. But beneath every smile, I felt something waiting. It started when Ethan lifted his glass. To Mom, he said, "For giving us a scare and reminding us how important family is." Everyone raised their glasses. I looked at him over the rim of my water. Family was important before I fainted. He gave a light laugh. "Of course. You know what I mean. I'm not sure I do." Vanessa jumped in quickly. "He means we don't want to take anything for granted." Lauren nodded. "Exactly. Things can change so fast," Mark muttered. "Especially at this age." The fork in my hand stopped halfway to my plate. Olivia looked at him sharply. "At what age?" she asked. Mark cleared his throat. "I just mean health-wise. We all have to be realistic." Realistic? Another word people used when they wanted to make cruelty sound mature. I set my fork down. I fainted once. I did not receive a death sentence. A silence fell over the table. Then Ethan reached for my hand. "No one is saying that, Mom." But his touch did not comfort me. It felt like a salesman placing a hand on a customer's shoulder before asking for a signature. After dinner, I stood to clear the plates, but Lauren stopped me. "Sit, Mom. We'll do it." For a moment, I was touched. Then I watched the way they moved Lauren gathering plates, Vanessa carrying serving bowls, Ethan stacking glasses, Mark trailing toward the kitchen with the wine bottle. It was too coordinated, too deliberate. Like they had planned who would guide me where, who would remove what, who would say what next. Olivia stayed beside me in the dining room. Her knee bounced under the table. "What's wrong?" I asked softly. She looked toward the kitchen. "Nothing, Olivia." She swallowed. "Just don't sign anything tonight." My body went cold. Before I could ask what she meant, Vanessa called from the kitchen. "Olivia, sweetheart, can you help me with dessert?" Olivia's face tightened. She stood slowly. "I'll be right back," she said. But she did not look sure. I remained at the table listening to the clatter of dishes and low voices behind the swinging kitchen door. At first, I could not make out words. Then Mark laughed too loudly, and Ethan hushed him. That was when I stood. I did not mean to eavesdrop. At least, that is what I told myself. But some truths do not knock politely. They leak through doors. I stepped into the hallway near the kitchen and stopped where the wall hid me from view. Lauren's voice came first. "We cannot keep waiting forever. She's already resisting." Ethan answered, "Because you pushed too fast with the bank stuff." "Oh, please, you asked for keys before she was even discharged. That was practical." Vanessa sighed. "Arguing about who scared her first isn't helping." Mark said, "The house is the main thing. If we miss the market window, that's real money lost." My hand found the wall. The hallway seemed to tilt. Lauren lowered her voice, but I still heard her. "I want Mom comfortable, but after she's gone, I'm not spending a year fighting over furniture and paperwork." After she's gone. Not if, after. Ethan said, "The will leaves everything split evenly." At least that's what Dad always said. Vanessa replied, "Wills can be challenged. Trusts can be complicated. We need to know exactly what exists. There's the house," Mark said. "The retirement accounts. Savings, her jewelry, the antiques." "My mother's clock goes to me," Lauren said quickly. "The clock," Ethan snapped. "Dad promised me that clock. He did not." "You don't even care about it. You just want whatever looks valuable. And you don't." Vanessa cut in. Stop. This is why we need Paige to sign the power of attorney before she gets worse. Before she gets worse. I pressed my palm against my chest. I had known something was wrong. I had felt it in the questions in the texts in Mark's measuring eyes. But feeling a storm coming is different from standing in the rain. My children were not worried about losing me. They were worried about losing control of what I owned. Mark spoke again. Look, I already talked to someone about the property. Not officially, just numbers, with updates that house could sell high. Lauren said, "You talked to a realtor casually." Ethan cursed under his breath. You had no right. Oh, but you asking for keys is noble enough, Vanessa hissed. She's in the other room. No one said, poor mom. No one said, this is wrong. No one said, she is alive. They were only afraid I might hear. I stepped backward very slowly until I reached the dining room again. My chair waited where I had left it. My napkin lay folded beside my plate. Richard's photograph on the mantel seemed to watch me from across the room. Olivia came out of the kitchen carrying a pie she clearly had not cut. Her eyes met mine. She knew. Maybe she had known before tonight. Maybe that was why she warned me. Maybe she had been trapped between loyalty to her father and love for her grandmother. I sat before my knees could fail me. When the others returned, their faces had been rearranged into kindness. Vanessa placed pecan pie in front of me. Your favorite. It was Richard's favorite, I said. She blinked. Oh. Right. Ethan sat down heavily. Mom, after dessert, there are a few things we should go over. I looked at each of them. My son, who had once brought me dandelions in a paper cup. My daughter, who had cried in my lap after her first heartbreak. My daughter-in-law, who smiled like silk stretched over steel. My son-in-law, who had already sold my home in his imagination. And Olivia, silent, pale, ashamed of the adults around her. A strange calm came over me. Not peace. Something colder. I smiled faintly and picked up my fork. Of course, I said. After dessert. Ethan relaxed. Lauren gave Vanessa a look of relief. Mark leaned back as if the evening was finally going his way. They mistook my softness for surrender. But as I took one small bite of pie, I made myself a promise. I would not accuse them. Not yet. I would not cry in front of them. Not tonight. I would let them talk. I would let them plan. I would let them reveal every greedy thought they had hidden behind concern. Because Richard had once told me, Paige, when people think you are weak, they stop pretending. That night, I understood exactly what he meant, and I decided to let them believe I was weaker than I was. The next morning, I woke before sunrise with the taste of pecan pie still bitter in my mouth. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. There is a difference. Peace has warmth in it. Quiet can be cold enough to make your bones ache. I sat at the kitchen table in my robe, staring at the 3 blue pieces of Richard's mug I had placed on a saucer. Clara had swept up the rest after my fall, but I had saved those fragments without knowing why. Maybe because I understood them. Something once whole, now broken, still too precious to throw away. My children had always argued. Ethan and Lauren had fought over toys, bedrooms, Christmas attention, college money, who got to sit in the front seat, who Richard praised more, who I protected more. Sibling rivalry, we used to call it, as if naming it made it harmless. But the conversation I overheard in the kitchen was not rivalry. It was planning. The kind of planning people do when they are not asking whether something is right, only how soon they can get away with it. I did not sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Mark's voice. The house is the main thing. Then Lauren's, after she's gone. Then Vanessa's smooth, practical cruelty. We need Paige to sign the power of attorney before she gets worse. Before she gets worse. By 9 o'clock, Ethan called. I let it ring. At 9:05, he called again. At 9:10, Lauren sent a text. Mom, please don't shut us out. We're worried. At 9:15, Vanessa wrote, Ethan is only trying to protect you. Please don't make this harder on everyone. Harder on everyone. I laughed once when I read that. Not because it was funny, but because sometimes pain comes out wearing the wrong expression. At 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I looked through the front window and saw Ethan standing on my porch in his dark wool coat, holding a folder under one arm. Vanessa stood beside him, her hair tucked neatly behind her ears, her smile already prepared. For a few seconds, I considered not answering, but Richard's voice came into my mind as clearly as if he were standing in the hallway. Don't hide from a storm, Paige. Watch which way it moves. So I opened the door. Ethan's eyes scanned my face immediately. You didn't answer your phone. I heard it. That doesn't explain why you didn't pick up. I wasn't ready to talk. Vanessa stepped forward and kissed my cheek lightly, leaving the scent of expensive perfume behind. Good morning, Paige. We brought coffee. I already made coffee. Oh. Her smile did not move. Well, this is from that little bakery you like. I looked at the paper cups in her hand. I had never liked that bakery. Richard had. Another small thing they had forgotten while pretending to care. I let them in anyway. Ethan walked straight to the dining room, not the living room. He set the folder on the table where we had eaten dinner the night before. The same table where my children had smiled over chicken and mashed potatoes while secretly preparing to carve up my life. Mom, he said, pulling out a chair, we need to be practical. I remained standing. I've noticed everyone keeps using that word lately. Because this is serious. I know it is. Vanessa sat beside him and folded her hands. No one wants to take anything from you. That was the first lie of the morning, and it arrived before the coffee had even cooled. Ethan opened the folder. Inside were papers clipped together in careful order. Too careful. The top page had bold lettering I did not fully understand at first glance, but one phrase stood out. Durable financial power of attorney. My stomach tightened. Ethan slid the papers toward me. This is standard, he said. It would allow me to step in if you need help managing things. If I need help? I repeated. Exactly. Then why are you bringing it before I've asked for help? His jaw tightened. Because people don't always know when they need it. Vanessa leaned toward me, her voice honey-soft. Paige, after what happened, we can't pretend everything is the same. Everything is not the same, I said. That part is true. Ethan missed the meaning in my voice. Or maybe he chose not to hear it. He tapped the document with one finger. This does not take anything away from you. It just lets me pay bills, speak with banks, handle insurance, make sure things don't fall through the cracks. Does Lauren know you brought this? His face changed, only slightly, but I saw it. She agrees we need a plan, he said. That wasn't my question. Vanessa stepped in. Lauren worries too. We all do. Does Lauren agree you should be the one with control? Ethan exhaled through his nose. This isn't about control. I almost smiled. The people most hungry for control always seemed offended when you named it. I sat down slowly, not because I wanted to join them, but because I needed to steady myself. Ethan pushed the papers closer. Just look them over. I reached for my reading glasses from the sideboard. My hands were calm. That surprised me. Inside, I was shaking, but my hands moved with the slow carefulness Richard used to have when he repaired old clocks. I read the first page, then the second, then the third. The more I read, the more the room seemed to shrink around me. The document did not merely allow Ethan to help pay bills. It gave him authority over my bank accounts, investments, property transactions, retirement benefits, insurance matters, legal claims, tax filings, and personal assets. It used language like full power, absolute discretion, and without further consent. I turned another page. My pulse beat in my ears. There was a section allowing him to access safe deposit boxes, another allowing him to sell or transfer property, another allowing him to make gifts. Gifts. I looked up. Did you read this before bringing it to me? Of course, Ethan said. And you still called it standard. It is standard. For whom? A mother or a corpse. His face flushed. That is unfair. No, Ethan. Unfair is asking me to sign away control of everything I own while pretending it's a favor. Vanessa's smile finally cracked. Paige, you're misunderstanding the tone. The tone is not the problem. The words are. Ethan reached for the papers, but I kept my hand on them. Where did you get this? An online legal service. You prepared legal documents about my assets without telling me. I prepared them to protect you. From what? From confusion, from mistakes, from people taking advantage of you. I looked at him for a long moment. People? Like whom? He looked away first. That told me more than any answer could have. I turned the page again and saw 2 signature lines beneath mine. Witness 1, Witness 2, both already filled in. Vanessa Porter, Mark Brooks. My breath stopped for one beat. Not blank lines waiting for the proper moment. Names already typed. Prepared? Arranged? Decided? I looked at Vanessa. You were going to witness this. She blinked, then glanced at Ethan. If needed. And Mark, he's family, Ethan said quickly. Funny. Yesterday, Clara wasn't family, even though she found me on the floor. But Mark can witness papers giving you power over my life. Ethan stood. Mom, you are making this hostile. No, I said quietly. You brought hostility into my house in a manila folder. His face hardened. For the first time, he stopped pretending. You don't understand what this is doing to us, he said. To you? Yes, to us. Lauren is panicking. Vanessa and I are losing sleep. Nobody knows what's where. Nobody knows your accounts, your insurance, your wishes. Dad left things too vague. At that, something inside me sharpened. Do not blame your father. Ethan's voice dropped. Dad is gone. I know that better than you ever will. The words landed hard. For a moment, he looked like the boy he had once been, hurt, angry, needing to win because he did not know how to grieve. Then Vanessa touched his sleeve. Maybe Paige should rest, she said. But her eyes were not soft anymore. They were calculating how much damage had been done. I gathered the papers and stood. I'll review these. Ethan held out his hand. I should keep the originals. No. Mom, you brought them to my house. You asked me to review them. I will. He stared at me. I stared back. That was when I realized how long it had been since my son had truly looked at me. Not as an aging woman to manage. Not as a signature to obtain. Not as a future estate to divide. But as the woman who had raised him, disciplined him, fed him, prayed over him, and once sat beside his bed all night when pneumonia turned his lips pale. He looked away again. Fine, he said, but don't wait too long. Vanessa stood and smoothed her coat. We only want what's best. I walked them to the door. As Ethan stepped onto the porch, he turned back. One more thing. If you talk to Lauren about this, please don't make it sound like I'm forcing you. I held the folder against my chest. "Are you afraid of how it sounds, Ethan? Or what it is?" He said nothing. After they left, I locked the door. Then I stood in the hallway for a long time, listening to their car pull away. My hands finally began to tremble. I carried the folder to Richard's old office, the small room at the back of the house, where sunlight fell across shelves of books and his framed navy photograph. The room still smelled faintly of cedar and paper. I sat at his desk and spread the documents out carefully. Page by page, I copied them on the old printer Ethan had once mocked me for keeping. "Mom, that thing belongs in a museum," he had said. Maybe it did, but that morning it worked. I made 2 copies of everything. One went into the gray lockbox. One went into a large envelope marked Ethan Power of attorney attempt. Then I took out a legal pad and wrote down every detail I could remember. Date, time, who came, what was said. Witness names already prepared. My hand moved steadily now. The fear was still there, but something else had risen beneath it. Clarity. The kind that comes when love finally stops making excuses for betrayal. When I finished writing, I opened the bottom drawer of Richard's desk. There, beneath old tax files and a box of fountain pen cartridges, was Daniel Whitmore's business card. Cream cardstock, black lettering, familiar name. Richard's lawyer, our lawyer once. I placed the card beside the copied documents. I did not call him yet, not because I was unsure, because I wanted one more piece of proof. My family thought I was confused, fragile, easy to corner. Let them. The weaker they believed I was, the bolder they would become. And bold people, I was beginning to understand, left fingerprints. Olivia came to me on a Thursday afternoon when the sky hung low and gray over Maple Ridge Lane. I remember that because the day matched my mood. The clouds looked heavy enough to fall, and the bare branches of the sycamore tree scratched against the window like nervous fingers. I had spent the morning sorting through the copies of Ethan's power of attorney papers, then putting them away, then taking them out again as if rereading them might somehow make them less ugly. It did not. Every sentence still said the same thing: control, access, authority. My son had brought those words into my house and called them protection. By 2:00, I had made tea. I did not drink and toast. I did not finish. I was standing at the kitchen sink, watching a squirrel run along the fence, when I saw Olivia's car pull into the driveway. She did not park in front like she usually did. She parked behind the old maple, half hidden from the street. That alone told me something was wrong. I opened the door before she knocked. Her eyes widened. "Grandma, you look like you're sneaking into a bank." She tried to smile, but her mouth trembled. "Can I come in?" "Always?" She stepped inside, glanced back toward the road, then closed the door quickly. Her hair was damp from the mist outside. She wore no makeup, and under her eyes were shadows too deep for a woman her age. I touched her cheek. "Olivia, what happened?" She shook her head. Not nothing. Just the movement of someone trying not to come apart." I guided her into the kitchen. She sat at the table where my children had eaten dinner 5 nights earlier, where Ethan had later spread out papers meant to strip me of independence. I placed a cup of tea before her, but she only wrapped both hands around it. "Did your father send you?" I asked. Her head came up fast. "No, he doesn't know I'm here." That answer frightened me more than if she had said yes. I sat across from her. For a while, we listened to the old house settle. The heater clicked on. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard sighed the way it always did when the weather changed. Richard used to say the house had joints like ours. Olivia stared at the steam rising from her cup. "I should have told you sooner," she whispered. My heart tightened. told me what? She closed her eyes. That they've been meeting. I did not speak. Dad, Aunt Lauren, Vanessa, Mark. Sometimes at Dad's house, sometimes on group calls. They say it's about taking care of you, but she swallowed hard. It's not. Not really. I folded my hands together to keep them still. How long? Since before you fainted. The room seemed to drop an inch. Before? She nodded. After Thanksgiving, I think. Maybe earlier. I came home from campus for a weekend, and I heard Dad and Vanessa talking in the den. They didn't know I was upstairs. What did they say? Olivia's fingers tightened around the cup. Vanessa said you were sitting on a gold mine and acting like it was just an old house. Dad said he didn't want to talk about it while you were healthy. Healthy? That word cut me in a new way. So they had not become greedy because I fainted. My fainting had only given their greed a timetable. Olivia blinked back tears. I tried to convince myself I misunderstood. I thought maybe adults talk coldly when they're scared. But then, after you went to the hospital, everything changed. They got organized. I remembered Ethan's folder, the prepared witness names, the texts arriving one after another, like coordinated knocks on my door. Yes, I said. They did. Olivia looked at me sharply. You know I know more than they think. Her lips parted. Did they ask you to sign something? I stood, slowly went to Richard's old office and returned with the envelope marked Ethan Power of attorney attempt. I placed it on the table and slid it toward her. She opened it with shaking hands. As she read, color drained from her face. Grandma, she whispered, I did not sign it. She covered her mouth. Thank God. That was when I realized she had been carrying fear not only for me, but alone. The child at my kitchen table had known something was wrong and had been trapped inside a house full of people causing it. I reached across the table and took her hand. You are not responsible for your father's choices. Her face crumpled. He's still my dad. I know, and I love him. I know that too. But I don't like who he becomes when money is involved. There it was. The sentence many families are too afraid to say out loud. I squeezed her hand. Sometimes love lets us see the best in people. Sometimes it forces us to admit the worst. She wiped her cheek with her sleeve, embarrassed. I heard them last night. My body went still. What did you hear? She pulled her phone from her purse and set it on the table. She did not unlock it yet. She only stared at it as if it were something dangerous. They had dinner at Aunt Lauren's. I wasn't supposed to be there. I stopped by to drop off a jacket I borrowed, and I heard them in the dining room. They were talking about you again. What did they say? Her thumb hovered over the screen. Grandma? I recorded part of it. The air changed. Outside, rain began tapping against the window, soft at first, then harder. You recorded them. I know it was wrong. No, I said. She looked up. No, I repeated softer. It may have been the first right thing anyone did. A sob escaped her before she could stop it. I was scared. They were talking like you were already gone. Dad said if you didn't sign the power of attorney soon, they needed to consider medical incapacity. Aunt Lauren said you'd never forgive them if they pushed too hard. Vanessa said you wouldn't have a choice if a doctor agreed you couldn't manage alone. Mark kept asking when the house could be listed. Listed? My house? The porch swing Richard built? The kitchen, where my babies ate cereal in pajamas? The hallway where I measured Ethan and Lauren's heights in pencil marks still hidden behind the pantry door? Listed. I felt something break inside me, but it did not shatter wildly. It cracked cleanly like ice under careful pressure. Olivia unlocked her phone. I don't know if this is enough. I only got 2 minutes before they heard me near the hallway and stopped talking. She slid the phone to me. A voice recording sat open on the screen. 2 minutes and 12 seconds. I looked at the play button, but I could not press it. Not yet. There are moments when truth sits in front of you like a sealed medical report. You know opening it will not create the illness, but you also know you will not be the same after reading it. Olivia watched me, tears clinging to her lashes. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what? For being part of them. You are not part of what they are doing. I'm Ethan's daughter, and you are my granddaughter. You are Olivia Porter. You have your own conscience. Do not hand it over to anyone, not even your father. She bowed her head and cried, then quietly but fully, the way young people cry when they have been trying to act older than their pain. I stood and went around the table. She leaned into me when I wrapped my arms around her shoulders. I pressed my cheek against her hair and remembered holding her as a baby, her tiny fist gripping my finger while Richard whispered, "This one has old eyes." He had been right. Some souls arrive already knowing how fragile love can be. After a while, she pulled back and wiped her face. What are you going to do? I looked toward the hallway, toward Richard's office, toward the lockbox hidden away with copies of Betrayal inside. I don't know yet. That was not entirely true. I knew I would not sign anything. I knew I would call Daniel Whitmore soon. I knew I would no longer mistake blood for loyalty. But I also knew I needed to be careful. Ethan and Lauren still believed their plan was private. That gave me time. Olivia seemed to understand. Don't tell Dad I gave it to you. I won't. If he finds out. She did not finish. She did not have to. Ethan had never hit anyone. He was not that kind of man. But anger has many hands. It can withdraw love. It can cut off support. It can turn a family against the only person brave enough to tell the truth. Your secret is safe with me, I said. She nodded, but fear remained in her eyes. I picked up her phone again and stared at the recording. Can you send this to me? Yes. Send it to my email, not text. Why? Because texts can be seen. Emails can be saved in more places. She looked at me for a moment, then gave a small, sad smile. You're not as helpless as they think. No, I said. I am not. For the first time that afternoon, something like pride crossed her face. She sent the recording. I opened my old laptop and saved it into a folder marked Recipes, then copied it again into another folder marked Church Newsletters. Richard had taught me long ago that important things should never live in only one place. Before Olivia left, she hugged me at the door. Grandma? Yes, sweetheart. Do you think Grandpa knew this would happen? The question settled between us. I thought of the sealed envelope in Daniel Whitmore's file. I thought of Richard's warning written in his careful hand. Open this only after they show you who they really are. I think I said slowly, your grandfather knew people better than we wanted him to. Olivia shivered and pulled her coat tighter. After she drove away, I went back to the kitchen table. The tea had gone cold, the rain had thickened, the phone lay in front of me. At last, I pressed play. Ethan's voice filled the room low and impatient. Grandma won't last long if she keeps living alone like this. My breath caught. Then Mark said, Then stop acting like this is about feelings. The estate has to be protected before she ruins the value of it. Lauren whispered. That is still our mother you're talking about. And Vanessa replied, calm as winter glass. Then your mother needs to stop standing in the way of what's inevitable. I stopped the recording before it finished. Not because I could not bear the truth, because I had heard enough. I looked across the kitchen at Richard's empty chair. "All right," I whispered. "They've shown me." Then I picked up Daniel Whitmore's business card and reached for the phone. I did not call Daniel Whitmore that afternoon. I sat with his business card between my fingers for nearly an hour, but I did not dial the number. Not because I had changed my mind. Not because I was afraid of Ethan or Lauren or the cold ambition I had heard in Vanessa's voice. I waited because Olivia's recording had taught me something important. They were not finished. People who believed they were entitled to your life rarely stopped at the first locked door. They checked the windows next. They searched for spare keys. They waited until you were tired, embarrassed, lonely, or confused enough to let them in. So I waited, and within 48 hours, they proved me right. It was Saturday morning when Lauren called. "Mom," she said too brightly, "are you feeling up for company today?" I was in Richard's office placing Olivia's recording on a small flash drive I had found in the desk drawer. What kind of company? Just us. "Ethan, Vanessa, mark me. Maybe Olivia if she's free." My fingers stilled. "All of you." We thought it would be good to sit together. Calmly this time. This time? She paused. "You know what I mean. Everyone's been emotional. Everyone." That was how people softened blame. They spread it thin enough to cover the guilty and the wounded alike. "What do you want to discuss, Lauren?" "Mom, please don't start suspicious. We're your children." I looked at Richard's photograph on the desk. "Yes," I said. "You are." She took that as agreement. "We'll come around 3. Again, not asking. Telling. After we hung up, I moved through the house slowly preparing nothing. No pie. No coffee cake. No roast chicken warmed in the oven. No flowers on the table. I had spent most of my life believing hospitality was love made visible. That Saturday, I understood hospitality could also become a stage where people performed concern while hiding knives behind their backs. At 2:50, I opened the curtains in the living room. The room was full of afternoon light, the kind that showed dust in the air and truth on faces. I chose my chair carefully, the wingback near the fireplace. Richard's favorite reading lamp beside it. My cane within reach, though I did not need it as much as they thought. Or as much as I wanted them to think. At 3 exactly, Ethan's SUV pulled up, followed by Lauren's white sedan. Mark stepped out first, already speaking on the phone. Ethan helped Vanessa from the passenger side, though she was perfectly capable of stepping down herself. Lauren carried a tote bag so large it looked like she had brought supplies for a committee meeting. Olivia arrived last, 10 minutes later. Her eyes found mine before she even removed her coat. I gave her the smallest nod I could. She understood. No one hugged me with real warmth except Olivia. Ethan kissed my cheek and said, "How are you feeling today?" "Weak," I said. The word slipped out softly, deliberately. His eyes flickered. Vanessa noticed too. Lauren placed her tote bag on the coffee table. "Then let's not make this harder than it needs to be." Mark finally ended his call and looked around the living room. His gaze moved to the mantel, the antique clock, the built-in shelves, the Persian rug, the old upright piano Lauren had hated practicing on as a child. He always looked at my home like he was mentally removing price tags. I leaned back in the chair and folded my hands. "What did you all come to say?" Ethan sat on the sofa across from me. Vanessa sat beside him. Lauren took the armchair nearest the coffee table, and Mark remained standing, which made him look more like a broker than a son-in-law. Olivia sat on the edge of the piano bench, silent. Lauren opened the tote bag and pulled out a notebook. "We made a list," she said. "A list of things that need to be handled." While I'm alive, her cheeks colored. "Mom, please." Ethan leaned forward. "No one is trying to erase you. I thought of them in Lauren's dining room saying Grandma won't last long. No, I said quietly. Go on. Lauren looked at Ethan. Ethan nodded. That small exchange told me everything. They had rehearsed. Lauren turned the first page of her notebook. First, medical safety. We think you need someone checking in every day. Clara already checks in. Ethan's mouth tightened. Clara is not enough, because she's not family. No one answered. Lauren continued quickly. Second, household management. The house is too much for one person. I've managed it for 43 years. You weren't 72 for 43 years, Mark said. Olivia's head snapped toward him. Mark Lauren warned. But Mark only lifted his hands. What? We're all thinking it. I looked at him. No, Mark. You are saying it because you think age makes disrespect sound factual. He flushed. Vanessa placed one hand gently on Ethan's knee as if reminding him to stay calm. Paige, no one wants to insult you, but a large home can become unsafe. And expensive, Mark added. There it is, I said. Ethan frowned. What is the word under all the other words? Money. It sat in the room, even though nobody spoke it. Lauren took a breath. Mom, can we please be practical? I almost laughed. If I never heard that word again, it would still be too soon. She turned another page. The antiques should be cataloged. My eyes moved to the mantel clock. Cataloged for insurance, she said. Ethan added, and to prevent confusion later. Later, Vanessa's voice came softly. Page later comes for everyone. Olivia looked down at her hands. Lauren kept reading. The jewelry should be appraised. The vehicle title should be located. Bank information should be placed in one folder. Insurance policies, too. And we need to know where the current will is. The current will. Not my wishes. Not my comfort. Not my grief. Paper. Value. Control. Mark finally sat, but only on the edge of the sofa. And the house needs an assessment. No, I said. Everyone looked at me. My voice had been quiet, but it had cut clean through the room. Mark blinked. No assessment. He gave a short laugh. Page and assessment doesn't mean selling tomorrow. Tomorrow, I repeated. How generous. Ethan stood. Mom, you're twisting everything. Am I? Yes. You're acting like we're vultures. The word hung in the room. Nobody had said it before, but everyone recognized it. Lauren's eyes filled with tears so quickly I knew they had been waiting near the surface. That is not fair, she whispered. I'm your daughter. I looked at her, and suddenly I did not see the polished woman in the cream sweater. I saw the little girl who used to climb into my lap after nightmares pressing her warm face against my neck. I saw the teenager who screamed she hated me, then left a note under my bedroom door apologizing. I saw every birthday cake, every fever, every school play, every prom dress hemmed by hand. My heart wanted to bend. That was the danger. A mother's heart is trained to reach for her children even when their hands are full of stones. I know you are my daughter, I said. That is what makes this hurt. Her tears stopped then, as if my pain offended her more than her own behavior. Ethan stepped between us slightly. Mom, this is exactly why we need structure. Emotions are getting in the way. I leaned back in Richard's chair and let my eyelids lower just for a moment. Not because I was tired, because I wanted them to think I was. Vanessa noticed. She needs rest, she said. Ethan's voice softened immediately. Mom, maybe we should make decisions while you're still clear. While I'm still clear, Olivia stood so abruptly the piano bench scraped against the floor. "Dad." He turned. "Not now, Olivia." "Yes, now." The room shifted. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Lauren looked startled. Mark rolled his eyes. Olivia's hands trembled at her sides, but her voice held. "Grandma is sitting right here. You keep talking about her like she's a problem to solve." Ethan stared at her. "You are too young to understand what we're handling." "No," Olivia said. "I understand exactly what you're handling. You're handling her house, her jewelry, her bank accounts, her will, everything except her." A silence fell so hard I heard the clock tick. For one wild second, I thought Ethan might lose control. His face darkened and his mouth opened, but Vanessa touched his wrist. "Olivia," Vanessa said softly, "this is adult business." Olivia laughed once without humor. "Then maybe the adults should act less greedy." Lauren gasped. "How dare you?" Mark stood. "That's enough." I raised one hand. Everyone stopped. Not because they respected me, because they remembered they still needed something from me. I let my hand fall to my lap. "Olivia is emotional," I said. Her eyes flew to mine, wounded. Just for a second. Then she understood. I was protecting her. If I defended her too strongly, they would know. They would suspect she had told me more. They would turn on her before I was ready. So I looked away from her and spoke to Ethan. "Maybe you're right," I said. His face changed instantly. Hope, relief, victory. All three passed through his eyes before he could hide them. About what he asked carefully. "Maybe I should organize things." Lauren straightened. Vanessa's posture softened. Mark sat back down. I watched them all mistake the opening of a trap for the opening of a door. "But not today," I said. "I'm tired." Ethan nodded quickly. "Of course. We can come back tomorrow?" "No. I will let you know when." His jaw tightened, but he forced a smile. "All right." Lauren reached for my hand. I let her take it. Her fingers were warm. Familiar. False. "We only want peace, Mom," she said. "No," I said gently. "You want certainty." She withdrew her hand. They left 10 minutes later, disappointed, but not defeated. Ethan kissed my cheek again. Vanessa promised to call. Mark glanced once more at the mantel clock. Lauren avoided my eyes. Olivia lingered at the door. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I touched her arm. "Don't be." After they were gone, I locked the door and leaned against it. The house was quiet again. But this time, the quiet was different. It was not cold. It was waiting. I walked into Richard's office, took Daniel Whitmore's card from the desk, and finally dialed the number. When a woman answered, I said, "This is Paige Porter. I need to speak with Mr. Whitmore about documents my family is trying to make me sign." There was a pause. Then she said, "Mrs. Porter, Mr. Whitmore has been expecting your call." My hand tightened around the phone. "Expecting?" "Yes, ma'am," she said gently. "Your husband left instructions." I sat down before my legs could give way. Richard. Even from the grave, my husband had seen the storm coming. And now, at last, I was ready to open the door. Daniel Whitmore's office was exactly where I remembered it, 2 blocks off Main Street, above a bakery that always smelled like cinnamon and butter, no matter the season. Richard used to joke that Daniel chose the location so his clients would feel calmer before discussing wills and death. "Nothing reminds people of life like fresh bread," he would say. That morning, I noticed the scent more sharply than I ever had before. It made me feel human. It made everything else feel heavier. I arrived 10 minutes early, my hands folded in my lap, as I sat in the small waiting area. The receptionist offered me coffee. I declined. My stomach felt too tight for anything warm. "Mrs. Porter," she said after a moment, "Mr. Whitmore will see you now." I followed her down a narrow hallway lined with framed degrees and photographs. I recognized some of them. Daniel and Richard standing together outside a courthouse decades ago, their wives beside them, all of us younger, all of us unaware of how time would rearrange everything. When I stepped into Daniel's office, he stood immediately. Paige. His voice had not changed. Older, yes. Slower, perhaps. But steady. Daniel. He walked around the desk and took both my hands in his. Not a quick handshake. Not a polite gesture. Something warmer. "I'm sorry it took something like this to bring you back here," he said. "So am I." He gestured for me to sit. "Tell me everything." I did, not in the rushed way I had spoken to Clara after my fall. Not in the careful way I had spoken to my children. I told him everything the way a woman speaks when she finally stops protecting the people who have already decided not to protect her. I told him about the hospital, the questions about keys and bank accounts, the dinner where they divided my life while I sat in the next room, the power of attorney document, the pre-filled witness signatures, Olivia's warning, the recording, the meeting in my living room. Every word, every look, every detail. Daniel did not interrupt. He only listened. His fingers steepled his expression, growing more serious with each piece of truth I placed on the table between us. When I finished, the room felt quieter than before. He leaned back slowly. "I was hoping I would not be right," he said. My heart skipped. "Right about what?" Daniel reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a thick file. He placed it carefully on the desk, then turned it toward me. "Richard came to see me 11 years ago," he said. 11? Yes, long before his health declined. I stared at the file. He told me he wanted to restructure everything, not just a will, something stronger, something that could not be easily challenged or manipulated. A cold awareness spread through me. What did he think would happen? Daniel looked at me gently. He didn't think anything specific would happen, but he believed people change when money is involved, even people they love. My throat tightened. That sounds like him. Daniel nodded. He said something I never forgot. He said, "If my children ever look at Paige and see assets instead of a person, I want there to be consequences." The words settled into my chest like something both painful and protective. Consequences. I had spent days thinking about what my children deserved, what they had earned through their behavior. Richard had already done that thinking. Daniel opened the file. Inside were documents far more complex than anything Ethan had brought to my table. Legal language filled page after page, but unlike Ethan's document, I could feel the intention behind these words. Protection, structure, truth. This, Daniel said, is the Porter Family Trust. My breath caught. "I don't remember signing this." "You didn't," he said. Richard established it using assets he controlled at the time, then gradually transferred additional holdings into it over the years. Some things remained in your direct name for simplicity. The house, for example. The house is still mine. Yes. Entirely. Free and clear. A quiet relief moved through me. Not because of the property, because of what it represented. They were already planning to sell it, I said. Daniel's eyes hardened slightly. They would have faced significant obstacles. I almost smiled. Good. He turned another page. Now this is where it becomes important. He slid a document toward me. At the top, in Richard's unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "Supplemental Conditions of Distribution." My fingers trembled as I read. If any beneficiary is found to have coerced, manipulated, or attempted to gain control over Paige Porter's assets, legal authority, or living arrangements prior to her death, I stopped breathing. That beneficiary shall forfeit their right to any distribution from the trust. My eyes moved to Daniel. Daniel. He nodded. Your husband built a safeguard. I looked back down. There was more. Any such forfeited portion shall be reallocated to designated charitable entities, including the Porter Senior Support Fund, to be established upon activation of this clause. The Porter Senior Support Fund. My vision blurred. Richard had not only protected me, he had planned what would happen if protection failed. Does it apply now? I asked quietly. Daniel did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached for a small remote on his desk and turned on a digital recorder. Before I answer that, he said, I need you to play the recording your granddaughter gave you. I stared at him. You know about that. I suspected you might have something, but I need to hear it directly. I hesitated, not because I doubted Daniel, because hearing those voices again felt like reopening a wound. Still, I took out my phone, found the recording, and pressed play. Ethan's voice filled the room. Grandma won't last long if she keeps living alone like this. Mark followed. The estate has to be protected before she ruins the value of it. Lauren's softer voice. That is still our mother you're talking about. And then Vanessa. Then your mother needs to stop standing in the way of what's inevitable. I stopped the recording again. The silence afterward felt heavier than the words themselves. Daniel exhaled slowly. That, he said, is exactly what Richard feared. My hands rested on the edge of the desk. So it applies? Yes. The word landed with the weight I could not immediately carry. Yes, he repeated. Based on what you've told me and what I've just heard, there is clear evidence of intent to manipulate control and prematurely claim your assets. I closed my eyes. Not in grief, not in relief. Something more complicated than either. My children, I whispered. Daniel's voice softened. Paige, this is not about punishing them. It is about protecting you and honoring your husband's wishes. But it will punish them. Yes. We sat with that truth together. There was no way around it. No softer version. No kinder wording. Consequences. Richard had chosen that word carefully. What happens now? I asked. Daniel leaned forward. Now we proceed carefully. He closed the file halfway, leaving the page with Richard's handwriting visible. You will not confront them yet. I wasn't planning to. Good. You will allow them to continue believing they are in control of the situation. A small, cold smile touched my lips. They already do. Meanwhile, he continued, we document everything, every request, every conversation, every attempt to influence you. I've started doing that. I expected you might. He reached for a notepad and wrote something down. We will also schedule a formal family meeting. My stomach tightened. A meeting? Yes, here, in this office, with all parties present. And then Daniel looked at me steadily. Then we let them speak. I understood, just as I had in my living room. Let them reveal themselves. Let them think they were winning. Let them walk willingly into the truth they had ignored. And after that, I asked. His eyes held mine. After that, Paige. We opened the envelope, your husband left. My breath caught. The envelope. The one I had never opened. The one marked, only open when they show you who they really are. I swallowed. I think they have, I said. Daniel nodded. Yes, he said quietly. I believe they have. I did not open Richard's envelope that day, even after Daniel slid the file back into his desk and walked me to the door, even after I stepped out into the cold Ohio afternoon, with the smell of cinnamon still lingering faintly in the air, even after I sat in my car, with my hands resting on the steering wheel, and my heart beating harder than it had in years. I did not open it. Not because I wasn't ready, but because Daniel had been very clear. Timing matters, he had said before I left. If you open it now, you'll understand the plan, but you'll lose the advantage. Let them continue. Let them expose themselves completely. Then, when the time is right, we reveal everything at once. All at once. That phrase stayed with me on the drive home. I had spent the last week gathering pieces, words, documents, recordings, looks and tensions. Small truths, each one painful on its own. But Richard had designed something bigger. A moment when all of it would come together undeniable. I parked in my driveway and sat for a long time before getting out. The house looked the same as always. White siding, green shutters, porch swing moving slightly in the breeze. It was almost cruel how ordinary everything appeared from the outside. Inside, everything had changed. When I stepped through the front door, the silence greeted me like an old friend, but it no longer felt lonely. It felt watchful. I placed my purse on the kitchen counter and walked straight to Richard's office. The gray lockbox waited where I had left it. I opened it carefully and added one more item inside the flash drive with Olivia's recording. Then I placed Daniel's business card on top of the stack. A small signal, a line drawn. I closed the box and slid it back into its hiding place. For a moment, I stood there with my hand resting on the cabinet door. Almost, I whispered. Almost. That evening, Ethan called again. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered. Mom, he said, his voice softer than usual. I've been thinking about earlier. Have you? Yes. I don't want things to get tense between us. They already are. A pause. Then he sighed. Maybe we pushed too fast. Maybe. Such a careful word. Maybe, I said. But you have to understand where we're coming from. I leaned against the kitchen counter. No, Ethan. I understand exactly where you're coming from. Another pause, longer this time. Well, good, he said finally. Then you know we're just trying to make sure everything is handled properly. Handled. Like a situation. Like an object. Like a problem. I spoke to a lawyer today, I said. The silence on the other end sharpened instantly. You did, yes. What lawyer? Daniel Whitmore. I could almost hear the shift in his posture. Richard's lawyer. Our lawyer. The man who knew more about our family's legal history than my children ever would. That's good, Ethan said slowly. That's very good. What did he say? He said something interesting. I let the words sit there heavy. What? He said, timing matters. Ethan laughed lightly. Too lightly. That sounds like a lawyer. Yes, I said. It does. There was something else in my voice then. Something he could not quite place. I could feel him trying. Mom, he said carefully, maybe we should all sit down together. With the lawyer. Just to make sure everyone understands everything clearly. There it was, the first sign of pressure shifting from private control to public negotiation. I smiled faintly. I think that's a good idea. Relief flooded his voice. You do? Yes. When I'll arrange it? Mom, I'll arrange it. I repeated gently but firmly. He hesitated, then nodded, though I could not see him. Okay, that's good. We spoke a little longer after that about small things. Weather, Olivia's classes, Lauren's work. Nothing real. Nothing important. When I hung up, I stood in the kitchen and let the silence return. They were adjusting. That was the word. Adjusting their strategy now that they knew I had spoken to Daniel. But they were not retreating. Not yet. And that meant one thing. They would try again. 2 days later, Lauren proved it. She came alone this time. No Ethan, no Vanessa, no Mark. Just Lauren. She knocked softly the way she used to when she was a teenager, asking permission to come in after missing curfew. I opened the door. She stood there with no makeup, her hair pulled back, her coat wrapped tightly around her. For a moment, she looked younger, almost like my daughter again. Hi, Mom, she said. Hi, can I come in? I stepped aside. She walked into the living room and stood there, looking around, as if she had not seen the place in years. Her eyes lingered on the photographs, the clock, the piano. I forget how much history is in this house, she said. No, I replied. You didn't forget. You just stopped seeing it. She winced. I deserve that. We sat down across from each other. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she leaned forward. I'm not here to fight. Then why are you here? She took a deep breath. I think Ethan is making things worse. I watched her carefully. She said we should wait. Slow down. Let you come to us when you're ready. But he's pushing. Pushing what? The paperwork, the control. And you don't agree? She hesitated. I agree that we need a plan. Of course she did, but she continued. I don't like how it's happening. There it was, a small crack. Not in the plan, in the alliance. I leaned back. What do you want, Lauren? The question surprised her. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. What do you want? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I want things to be fair. Fair to whom? To everyone. Define everyone. She frowned. Mom? No. Define it. Everyone means you. Ethan, Vanessa, Mark, Olivia, me. Who does fair protect? She looked down at her hands. I don't know. That was the first honest thing she had said. I softened slightly. Do you know what your father wanted? I asked. Her head lifted. What do you know what Richard wanted for this family? Her eyes filled. I think he wanted us to stay close. Yes, I said. He did. She swallowed. And I think I added quietly, he knew that might not happen. Her breath caught. Why would you say that? I held her gaze. Because he made plans. Lauren's face changed. What kind of plans? I stood, slowly. The kind you'll hear about soon. She stood too. Mom, please don't shut me out. I'm not shutting you out. It feels like it. I stepped closer to her. No, Lauren. What you're feeling is the door closing on something you thought you could control. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm your daughter. I know. Then don't punish me for Ethan's mistakes. The words echoed in the room. Not Ethan's. Her mistakes. There it was again. Not responsibility. Deflection. I placed my hand gently on her arm. This isn't about punishment, I said. It's about truth. She shook her head. I'm scared. For a moment, my heart broke again, because this time it wasn't anger in her voice. It was fear. What are you afraid of? I asked softly. Her answer came out in a whisper. That we're going to lose everything. I looked at her for a long time. Then I said very quietly, Lauren, you already lost something. She stared at me. What? I stepped back. Your father tried to protect it. Her breath caught. Protect what? I walked toward Richard's office, stopping at the doorway. You'll find out soon. I turned back to her. And when you do, you'll understand why he did what he did. She stood frozen in the living room, tears on her face, questions in her eyes. But for the first time since all of this began, I did not feel weak standing in front of her. I felt prepared, because the next time we all sat in the same room, no one would be pretending anymore. The next move came faster than I expected. Ethan didn't wait for the meeting with Daniel. He didn't wait for my call. He didn't even pretend to. He came to my house on a Monday morning with a plan already in motion. I was in the living room, sitting by the window with a book open on my lap, but unread when I heard the sound of his SUV pulling into the driveway. I didn't get up right away. I let him come to the door. I let him ring the bell. Once, twice, 3 times. Only then did I rise slowly and make my way to the door, leaning slightly on my cane. Weak. That was the role I had chosen, and I intended to play it well. When I opened the door, Ethan stood there with Vanessa behind him, her hand resting lightly on his arm, as if she were calming him or controlling him. Mom, he said, already stepping forward. We need to talk. Good morning to you too. This is important. So is knocking once and waiting. He ignored that. They both stepped inside, bringing the cold air with them. Ethan didn't remove his coat. That told me he didn't intend to stay long, or that he expected the conversation to end quickly in his favor. Vanessa closed the door gently behind them. We won't take much of your time, she said. That depends on how you use it, I replied. Ethan exhaled, impatient. Mom, we've been thinking about everything, and we've come to a decision. A decision, not a discussion, not a suggestion. A decision. I walked back to my chair and sat down slowly. Have you? Yes. And what is this decision you've made about my life? Vanessa glanced at Ethan, then spoke. We think it's best if you move into assisted living, at least temporarily. There it was. The next step. I folded my hands in my lap. And what would happen to this house while I'm gone? Ethan didn't hesitate. We would manage it. Manage. Such a careful word for something much more final. Manage how? Maintain it. Pay the bills. Make sure it's secure. And if you decide it's too much to maintain, Vanessa stepped in smoothly. That's something we would evaluate together. Together. I almost smiled. I see, I said. Ethan stepped closer, his voice lowering, becoming more persuasive. Mom, this is about safety. You fainted. You live alone. If something worse happens, no one will be there. I've lived alone for 6 years, and things change. They always do. Vanessa crouched slightly so she could meet my eyes. Paige, please don't think of this as losing your independence. Think of it as gaining support. Support? I looked at her carefully. You mean supervision? Her smile flickered. No. Care and control, I added quietly. Ethan's patience snapped. This isn't about control. The force in his voice filled the room. For a moment, he seemed surprised by it himself. Vanessa touched his arm again. Ethan. He inhaled sharply, forcing himself to calm down. Mom, he said more carefully, we've already looked at a few places. There's one nearby. Nice. Clean. Good staff. You'd like it. Already looked. Already chosen. Already decided. What's it called? I asked. Vanessa answered this time. Willow Creek Assisted Living. Do you have a brochure? Ethan blinked. Yes, he said, reaching into his coat pocket. Actually, I do. He handed me a folded pamphlet. I took it slowly, turning it over in my hands as if I were considering it seriously. Which in a way, I was. Not because I intended to move there, but because I wanted them to believe I might. Inside, I could feel their anticipation building. Hope. Relief. The quiet certainty that this conversation would end the way they wanted. I opened the brochure. Smiling elderly couples, sunlit dining rooms, soft chairs, gentle promises. A place designed to feel like home while reminding you it wasn't. It looks pleasant, I said. Vanessa's shoulders relaxed slightly. It is. And how long would I stay there? Until it's clear what's best long term, Ethan said. And during that time, you would manage my house. Yes, and my finances. He hesitated, temporarily. And under what authority? That question hit harder. Vanessa answered before he could. We would still need you to sign the power of attorney. Of course. The pieces were fitting together now. Move me out. Take control of the house. Secure financial authority. Remove me from the center of my own life. Neatly. Legally. Irreversibly. I closed the brochure and placed it on my lap. And if I say no, Ethan's jaw tightened. We're trying to avoid that. That wasn't my question. Silence. Then Vanessa spoke carefully, choosing each word. If you refuse, we may need to involve medical professionals to assess your ability to make safe decisions. There it was. The threat. Wrapped in concern. Dressed in clinical language. But unmistakable. My fingers tightened around the edge of the brochure. You would try to have me declared incompetent. Ethan stepped forward quickly. No one is saying that you just did. Vanessa's voice remained calm. We're saying we need to ensure your safety, at the cost of my freedom. At the cost of your risk, she corrected. I looked from one to the other. My son, my daughter-in-law, people I had welcomed into this house, people who now stood in front of me deciding how to remove me from it. And yet, I did not feel fear, not anymore. I felt something else, something steadier, because now I knew exactly where this was going, and more importantly, so did Richard. I leaned back slightly, letting my shoulders relax. All right, I said. Ethan blinked. What? All right, I repeated softly. I'll consider it. The shift in the room was immediate. Relief. Triumph. Vanessa's smile returned smooth and controlled. That's all we're asking, she said. Ethan nodded quickly. We can visit the place tomorrow, just to see it. Tomorrow is too soon. Wednesday, then. I paused. Wednesday, I said. They exchanged a glance. Everything was moving forward again. According to their plan, not mine. Good, Ethan said. That's good. He picked up the brochure from my lap and tapped it lightly. You'll see. This is the right move. I looked at him. Yes, I said, quietly. I think we're very close to the right move. He didn't hear the difference. They stayed another 10 minutes, talking about logistics appointments, small details that made everything feel official. I nodded when appropriate, asked a few questions, played my part. When they finally left, Ethan kissed my cheek again. Vanessa squeezed my shoulder. We'll take care of everything, she said. I watched them walk to the car, watched them drive away, watched the empty driveway settle back into stillness. Then I closed the door and locked it. Slowly, carefully, deliberately. I walked into Richard's office and sat down at his desk. For a moment, I did nothing, just listened. The house, the quiet, my own breath. Then I reached for the phone and dialed Daniel Whitmore. He answered on the second ring. Whitmore, it's Paige. I was expecting your call. They're trying to move me into assisted living, I said. A pause. Then, that's escalation. Yes, and the power of attorney, still part of the plan. Another pause. Then Daniel's voice steady and precise. Good. I almost laughed. Good. Yes, he said, because now they've crossed the line clearly. There will be no ambiguity when we present this. I leaned back in the chair. When? Soon, he said. Very soon. I looked at the drawer where the envelope waited. Sealed. Patient. Ready. I think they're ready, I said. Daniel's voice softened slightly. Then it's time to let your husband speak. My hand moved toward the drawer. Not yet, but soon, very soon. Wednesday arrived with a quiet kind of inevitability. The kind that doesn't rush you, but doesn't let you escape either. I woke before dawn, not because I was nervous, but because my body understood what my mind had already accepted. This was the beginning of the end. Or, perhaps more truthfully, the end of pretending. I stood in the kitchen and made coffee the way Richard used to strong dark patient. I poured 1 cup for myself and set another on the counter beside it as if he might walk in at any moment and take it without a word. Stay with me today, I whispered. The house didn't answer, but it didn't feel empty. At 10 o'clock, I was dressed and ready. Not in anything formal. Not in anything that looked like armor. Just a simple navy dress, low heels, my hair brushed back neatly. Dignified. That was the word Richard always used. Paige, when things get hard, don't get louder. Get steadier. At 10:30, Ethan's SUV pulled into the driveway. Right on time. Of course. Vanessa stepped out first this time, smoothing her coat as she looked toward the house. Ethan followed, checking his watch, already impatient. Lauren's car arrived a minute later. Mark was with her. And Olivia? Olivia came in her own car again. That mattered more than they knew. I opened the door before they knocked. Ready? Ethan asked. Yes, I said. He glanced at my cane. You sure you're okay? I'm fine. Vanessa smiled. We'll take it slow. I stepped outside and locked the door behind me. For just a moment, I rested my hand on the wood. My home. Still mine. For now. The drive to Daniel's office was quiet. Ethan drove. Vanessa sat beside him. Lauren and Mark followed behind us. Olivia stayed close in her own car. No one spoke much. They thought this was a routine meeting, a formality, a chance to get everything in order. They had no idea. When we arrived, Daniel's receptionist greeted us with a polite smile. Mr. Whitmore is ready for you. We followed her down the hallway, the same hallway I had walked just days before. But this time, I wasn't alone. This time, I brought the truth with me. Daniel stood as we entered. Mrs. Porter, he said warmly. Then his eyes moved to the others. Mr. Porter, Miss Brooks. Mr. Brooks, Mrs. Porter. His tone remained polite, but something underneath it had changed. Measured, prepared. And you must be Olivia, he added gently. Olivia nodded. We all sat. Ethan took the seat closest to Daniel's desk, positioning himself naturally as the one in control. Vanessa sat beside him. Lauren sat across from me. Mark leaned back slightly, arms crossed, already assessing the room. Olivia sat near me, close enough that I could feel her presence, close enough that she could feel mine. Daniel folded his hands. Thank you all for coming. Ethan nodded. We appreciate you making time for this. Of course, Daniel said. Paige asked me to facilitate a discussion about her estate, her care, and her future planning. Ethan relaxed slightly. Good. He still thought this was his meeting. Daniel turned to me. Would you like to begin? I shook my head. No. I'd like them to speak first. Ethan didn't hesitate. Sure, he said. That makes sense. Of course it did. He believed he had everything to gain. He leaned forward. Look, the situation is simple. Mom had a health scare. She lives alone. We're concerned. We think it's time to take a more structured approach to her care and finances. Daniel nodded. Go on. We've discussed assisted living as a temporary solution. Ethan continued. And we've prepared documents that would allow me to manage her finances to ensure everything is handled properly. Daniel's eyes flickered. Prepared documents. Ethan reached into his briefcase and pulled out the same folder. The same one he had brought to my kitchen. He slid it across the desk. Daniel didn't open it right away. Instead, he looked at Ethan. Did Paige request these documents? Ethan hesitated. No, but did Paige authorize their creation? We're her children, Ethan said, his voice tightening. We don't need permission to help her. Daniel let that sit, then he opened the folder. He flipped through the pages slowly, carefully. Page by page. The room grew quieter with each turn. Finally, he placed the documents down. These are extensive. They're standard, Ethan said quickly. Daniel looked at him. No, he said calmly. They're not. The first crack appeared. Ethan shifted in his seat. Vanessa leaned forward slightly. What do you mean? She asked. Daniel folded his hands again. I mean that this document grants near total financial and legal control over Mrs. Porter's assets, property, and personal affairs. It is not a limited support measure. It is a transfer of authority. That's not how we intended it, Vanessa said smoothly. Daniel's gaze didn't move. Intent is not what courts evaluate. Language is. Silence. Lauren looked at Ethan. Ethan looked at the desk. Mark frowned. Daniel turned to me. Paige, did you sign this? No. Were you planning to? No. Daniel nodded once. Then he reached into his desk and pulled out a separate file. Not Ethan's, Richard's. The room shifted again, subtly but unmistakably. Before we go any further, Daniel said, there are some things you should all be aware of. Ethan straightened. What things? Daniel opened the file. The Porter Family Trust. Lauren blinked. The what? Mark leaned forward. Wait, what trust? Vanessa's eyes narrowed slightly. Ethan's voice sharpened. Mom never mentioned a trust. I said nothing. Daniel looked at each of them in turn. That's because it was not created by Paige. The room held its breath. It was created by Richard Porter, he said. My husband's name landed in the room like a door slamming shut. Lauren's face went pale. Ethan frowned. That doesn't make sense. It does, Daniel said calmly. Your father established a legal structure years ago to manage and protect the majority of his assets. Majority, Mark echoed. Yes. Ethan shook his head. No, the house. The house is separate, Daniel said, and remains in Paige's name. Relief flickered across Ethan's face. Too soon, Daniel continued. But most other assets, investments, accounts, and future distributions are governed by the trust. Vanessa leaned forward. And who controls the trust? Daniel's expression didn't change. I do. The room went completely still. Ethan's voice came out slower now. As in, you decide what happens to everything I execute the terms Richard established. Lauren's hands trembled. What terms? Daniel closed the file gently. That he said is where this meeting becomes very important. He looked at me. I met his gaze. A silent understanding passed between us. The moment was coming. The one Richard had prepared. The one I had waited for. Daniel turned back to my children. There are conditions attached to the distribution of this estate. Ethan frowned. What kind of conditions? Daniel's voice remained steady. The kind that depend on your behavior. The room tightened. Vanessa's smile disappeared completely. Mark leaned forward suddenly, very interested. Lauren whispered, What does that mean? Daniel folded his hands again. It means he said that everything you believe you're entitled to may not belong to you at all. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. And for the first time since this began, I saw something new in their eyes. Not confidence. Not control. Fear. Fear changes people. It strips away the soft edges they use to hide behind and reveals something sharper underneath. In my children's eyes, I saw it, now raw, immediate, undeniable. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing what they believed I would leave behind. Ethan leaned forward, his voice lower than before. What do you mean, it may not belong to us? Daniel didn't answer immediately. He opened the file again carefully, as though each page carried weight beyond paper. It means, he said calmly, that your father established conditions that must be met before any distribution occurs. Mark scoffed. Conditions, like what? Paying taxes on time. Daniel didn't look at him. Behavioral conditions. That word landed differently. Behavioral. Lauren's voice trembled. What kind of behavior? Daniel turned a page and slid the document slightly forward, not enough for them to read, just enough for them to feel its presence. Specifically, he said, how you treat your mother while she is still alive. The silence that followed was not empty. It was tight, heavy. Ethan's jaw hardened. That's subjective. No, Daniel said evenly. It's not. Vanessa leaned forward, her composure returning in layers. What exactly are you accusing us of? Daniel's eyes moved to me briefly. I gave the smallest nod. He reached for a small device on his desk. My heart beat once hard. The moment had come. Without ceremony, without warning, Daniel pressed a button. Ethan's voice filled the room. Grandma won't last long if she keeps living alone like this. Every face changed. Mark's head snapped toward the sound. Lauren's hand flew to her mouth. Vanessa went perfectly still. Ethan froze. The recording continued. The estate has to be protected before she ruins the value of it. That's not, Mark started. Daniel raised a hand. Let it play. Lauren's voice followed. That is still our mother you're talking about. For a moment, hope flickered in her eyes as if that one sentence might save her. Then, Vanessa's voice came calm and cutting. Then, Your mother needs to stop standing in the way of what's inevitable. The recording ended. Silence. Not the quiet of peace, the quiet of exposure. Ethan stood abruptly. "This is taken out of context, is it?" Daniel asked. "Yes. You can't just play a piece of a conversation and pretend it means something." Vanessa recovered faster. "We were discussing concerns," she said. "Real concerns. About Paige's safety. About her living situation. About protecting her interests." "Protecting whose interests?" I asked softly. She looked at me. Yard by yard, the mask returned. "Yours," she said. I held her gaze. "No," I replied. "Not mine." Lauren shook her head, tears spilling again. "Mom, please. We were worried. We said things we shouldn't have said, but that doesn't mean what I asked. That doesn't mean we don't love you." There it was, the shield they all reached for. Love, as if saying the word could erase what they had done with it. I stood slowly. Not weak this time, not fragile, just steady. "You may love me," I said, "but you did not respect me." Ethan's voice sharpened. "Mom, this is ridiculous. Families talk. People get frustrated. That doesn't mean we should lose everything over a few conversations. Everything." The word slipped out before he could stop it. Daniel didn't miss it. "Mr. Porter," he said, "this is not about isolated conversations. It is about intent. And you think you can prove intent from that?" Daniel met his gaze. "That recording is only one piece." Ethan's confidence faltered, just for a second. "What do you mean?" Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he turned to me. "Paige, would you like to add anything?" I looked at my children. All of them. Ethan rigid with anger, Lauren shaking with emotion, Vanessa calculating, Mark defensive, Olivia silent but watching. "I do," I said. I reached into my purse and took out the envelope I had brought, the one marked in my handwriting, Ethan Power of Attorney Attempt. I placed it on the desk. Daniel opened it and spread the documents out. These, he said, were prepared without Paige's request or consent. They grant full financial authority to Ethan Porter. They include pre-filled witness signatures. Lauren stared. "Wait, you already signed those." "No," I said. Mark leaned forward. "That's normal. You prepare documents in advance. Do you also fill in witnesses before the person agrees?" Daniel asked. Mark sat back. Vanessa spoke quickly. "That was just efficiency." "No," Daniel said. "It was assumption." Ethan's voice rose. "This is being twisted." "No," I said quietly. "It's being revealed." He turned to me. "You're letting him turn you against us." I almost laughed. Against us! As if I had not been listening. As if I had not been present. As if I had not been the subject of their plans. "I didn't need help to hear what you said," I replied. Lauren stepped forward suddenly. "Mom, I never wanted this to go this far." "Then why did it?" I asked. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Ethan. There it was again. Not independence, alignment. Vanessa leaned back, her voice cooler now. "Let's be realistic. Even if we said things poorly, that doesn't justify stripping us of our inheritance." There it was. Finally. No more careful wording. No more pretending. Inheritance. Daniel nodded slightly. "Thank you," he said. Vanessa frowned. "For what? For clarifying your position?" Ethan looked between them. "What is going on?" Daniel closed the file slowly. "What's going on," he said, "is that your father anticipated this possibility." Lauren shook her head. No. No, he wouldn't do that to us. I felt something deep in my chest tighten. Not anger, not even pain. Something quieter. Acceptance. He didn't do anything to you, I said softly. He protected something. Lauren's voice broke. Protected what I looked at her, at all of them. Then I reached into my purse again. This time, I took out a different envelope. Older, heavier, sealed. The one I had never opened. The one Richard had left behind. Only open when they show you who they really are. My hands trembled slightly as I placed it on the desk, every eye in the room fixed on it. "What is that?" Ethan asked. I didn't answer. I looked at Daniel. He nodded once. It was time. I broke the seal. The sound was soft, but in that room, it echoed. I opened the envelope and pulled out a folded letter. Richard's handwriting stared back at me. Familiar. Steady. Unmistakable. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I began to read, out loud, to my children. The room seemed to shrink. To Ethan and Lauren. Lauren's hand covered her mouth again. Ethan didn't move. If you are hearing this, it means you have shown your mother who you truly are. Silence. Absolute. Heavy. You may believe you are entitled to what I built. You are not. Ethan's face drained of color. What the hell? I kept reading. Your mother is not a stepping stone to an inheritance. She is the reason there is anything to inherit at all. My voice didn't shake anymore. If you have chosen to treat her as an obstacle instead of a person, then you have already forfeited what you thought was yours. Lauren collapsed into the chair. Vanessa's composure cracked. Mark stared, speechless. Ethan took a step back. No, he said. No, this can't. I lowered the letter slowly, and for the first time since all of this began, no one interrupted. No one argued. No one pretended. Because Richard had just spoken, and they could not argue with the dead. No one spoke for several seconds after I finished reading Richard's letter. It wasn't the kind of silence that waits for permission. It was the kind that forces people to face something they can't undo. Ethan was the first to move. This isn't legally binding, he said quickly, his voice rough. It's just a letter. I looked at him. He wasn't wrong, but he wasn't right either. Daniel answered before I could. The letter itself is not the binding instrument, he said calmly. The trust is. Ethan's eyes snapped toward him. What? Daniel opened the file again, flipping to the section I had already read days before. These terms, he said, tapping the page lightly, are embedded in the trust agreement. This letter simply explains the intent behind them. Lauren shook her head slowly, as if trying to clear it. No, that doesn't make sense. Dad wouldn't do that to us. I felt something inside me shift at her words. Not anger, not even disappointment, recognition. You keep saying that, I said quietly, as if your father's love meant he would never hold you accountable. Lauren's face crumpled. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? She didn't answer. Because she didn't have one. Mark leaned forward, his voice sharper now. So what? We're just cut out. Just like that, Daniel didn't raise his voice. No one is cut out arbitrarily, he said. The trust outlines specific behaviors that result in forfeiture. Vanessa's composure returned in a different form, now cooler, more strategic. And you believe we meet those conditions? She asked. Daniel met her gaze. Yes. The word didn't echo. It didn't need to. It landed exactly where it was meant to. Ethan let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. This is unbelievable. No, I said softly. This is exactly what your father believed was possible. He turned to me. You're just going along with this. I'm honoring what he built. You're letting him take everything away from us. The word everything again. Not love, not relationship, everything. Daniel closed the file slowly. Let me clarify something, he said. Nothing is being taken away from you. You are losing what was conditional. Mark scoffed. Conditional on what? Being perfect. Conditional, Daniel said, on treating your mother with respect, autonomy, and good faith. Vanessa crossed her arms. That's subjective. No, Daniel replied. It's demonstrable. He reached for the recorder again. This is one example. There are others. Ethan's expression flickered. What others? I spoke this time. The documents you prepared. Lauren's head snapped toward Ethan. What documents? Ethan didn't answer. Vanessa stepped in. It was just a precaution, I continued. The meetings you had without me. Lauren's face went pale. You knew about those? Yes. Her eyes filled. Mom, we were just trying to plan. You were planning my life without me. She flinched. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, pacing slightly now. This is being blown out of proportion. Is it? I asked. Yes. People talk. People make plans. That doesn't mean we deserve to lose everything. I stood slowly. Not for effect. Not for drama. Because I needed to meet him at eye level. You didn't just talk, I said. You decided. He stopped pacing. What's the difference? The difference, I said, is that you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a problem. The words hung in the air, sharp, clear, unavoidable. Lauren began to cry quietly. I never wanted that, she whispered. But you allowed it, I said. She looked at Ethan, then at Vanessa, then back at me. And for the first time, she didn't have anyone else to stand behind. Vanessa spoke again, her voice steadier now. Even if all of this is true, what happens next? Daniel answered. The trust will be activated under the conditional clause, and that means she pressed. It means that any beneficiary found to have violated those conditions forfeits their share. Mark leaned forward again. And where does it go? Daniel didn't hesitate. To the Porter Senior Support Fund. The room shifted again. A what? Ethan asked. A charitable fund, Daniel said. Established by Richard to support elderly individuals who have been neglected, manipulated, or abandoned by their families. The irony was not lost on anyone. Mark shook his head. You've got to be kidding me. I am not. So you're saying everything goes to charity? Not everything, Daniel corrected. The trust outlines a secondary condition. Ethan's voice sharpened. What condition? Daniel looked at Olivia. For a moment, no one understood. Then slowly, they did. Lauren's voice came out barely above a whisper. No. Ethan turned. No, he repeated. Olivia froze. Olivia, any beneficiary who demonstrates consistent care, respect, and integrity toward Paige, Porter Daniel said, retains eligibility. The room tilted. Ethan stared at his daughter. You're not serious. I looked at Olivia. Her eyes were wide, terrified, unprepared. She shook her head. I don't want this. I stepped toward her. This isn't about what you want, I said gently. It's about who you are. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't do anything special. You did, I said. You told the truth. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. So that's it. She gets everything because she recorded a conversation. No, Daniel said. She remains eligible because she did not participate in manipulation. Vanessa's voice cut in. This is absurd. Is it? Daniel asked. Yes. You're rewarding betrayal. I felt something in me harden. No, I said quietly. We're recognizing honesty. Vanessa's eyes flashed. She went behind her family's back. She stood up for what was right. That's your opinion. No, I said. That's my reality. Silence again. Heavier this time. More final. Ethan looked at me. Really looked. For the first time in days. And something in his expression changed. Not anger. Not denial. Something closer to understanding. Or maybe regret. Mom, he said slowly, if we fix this, if we make it right. The question hung there, unfinished, hopeful. Too late. I shook my head. You're not asking how to make it right, I said. You're asking how to undo the consequences. He didn't deny it, because he couldn't. Lauren wiped her face. Is there anything we can do? Daniel answered this time. The trust is clear. Actions have already been taken. Evidence has been established. So that's it, she whispered. That's it, he said. No anger, no cruelty, just truth. Mark leaned back defeated. This is insane. Vanessa said nothing now. She was thinking, calculating, looking for a way out that didn't exist. And Ethan stood there staring at the desk, at the file, at the letter, at the reality he had walked himself into. Finally, he spoke. Not loudly, not angrily, just quietly. We thought we were being smart. I felt something in my chest soften, just a little. Yes, I said. You did. He nodded once, and we were wrong. The room held its breath again, because that was the first honest thing he had said. Not justification, not deflection, truth. But truth doesn't always change the outcome. I placed my hand on the back of Olivia's chair, and for the first time since this began, I felt something close to peace, because the truth was no longer hidden, and what came next would not be decided in whispers. The room didn't recover after that. It couldn't. There are moments in life when something invisible breaks something you didn't even realize was holding everything together until it's gone. That day in Daniel Whitmore's office, whatever remained of the illusion of our family shattered quietly, but completely. Ethan sat down slowly, not because he wanted to, because his legs no longer trusted him. Lauren didn't move at all. She stared at the desk, her hands clenched in her lap as if holding on to something that was already slipping away. Vanessa had gone still again, but this time it wasn't control, it was calculation under pressure. Mark leaned back, but the confidence he had carried into the room was gone. Only Olivia remained unchanged. Not calm, not comfortable, but steady. And that I realized was the difference. Steady doesn't mean untouched. It means anchored. Ethan finally spoke. So what now? His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was hollow. Daniel answered carefully. Now the trust proceeds as written. Ethan nodded once slowly. And we just Walk away. No, Daniel said. You don't walk away. You live with the outcome of your actions. Ethan looked at me, not at Daniel, not at the file, at me. Mom, he said quietly, is this what you want? That question settled deeper than anything else that had been said. Not because it was manipulative, but because for the first time, it sounded real. I took a breath. This isn't about what I want, I said. It's about what happened. That's not an answer. It is the only one that matters. Lauren's voice broke in. It matters to me, she whispered. I turned to her. Her makeup had smudged her composure completely gone. It matters to me too, I said gently. Then don't let this happen. Her plea was raw, honest. Too late. I stepped closer to her. This already happened, Lauren. No, she said, shaking her head. It doesn't have to end like this. Then how should it end? She opened her mouth, closed it. Because there was no version of this story where everything returned to the way it had been. Not after what they had said, not after what they had done, not after what they had revealed. Mark stood up abruptly. This is insane, he said again. People say things, families argue. That doesn't mean you lose your inheritance over it. Daniel didn't respond. He didn't need to. Because Mark's words only confirmed everything Richard had feared. Vanessa finally spoke again. This can be challenged. Her tone was controlled, but I heard the strain beneath it. On what grounds, Daniel asked. Intent, misinterpretation, undue influence. She glanced at me. Emotional manipulation. I almost smiled. That's an interesting choice of words, I said. Her eyes met mine. Neither of us looked away. You're letting a single narrative define everything, she continued. That's not justice. No, I said. It's consequence. Ethan rubbed his face, exhausted. This is a disaster. No, Daniel said quietly. This is a system working as designed. Ethan let out a short, bitter laugh. You're telling me my father planned this? Yes, he planned to cut us out if we... What made mistakes? Daniel shook his head. He planned to protect your mother if you stopped seeing her as a person. The room fell silent again. Ethan looked at me, and this time, there was no defense in his eyes, only something softer, something more dangerous. Regret. I didn't think it would go this far, he said. I believed him. That was the tragedy. He hadn't planned to become this person. He had simply allowed it, little by little, step by step, until there was no clear line between concern and control, between love and entitlement, between family and something else. Lauren reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. Mom, she said, her voice trembling. I was scared. I know. I thought if we didn't organize things, everything would fall apart. And so you tried to take control. Yes, she admitted. And in doing that, you lost something more important. Her fingers tightened around mine. I didn't mean to. I know, I said again. That was the hardest part. They hadn't meant to. They had simply chosen themselves over me. And that choice has consequences. Olivia spoke for the first time since the letter. Can I say something? Everyone turned to her. Even Mark. Even Vanessa. Even Ethan. She stood slowly. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice didn't. I don't want any of this. Ethan's expression softened immediately. Olivia. No, she said, shaking her head. I mean it. I don't want the money. I don't want the house. I don't want any of it. Vanessa frowned. That's not how this works. I don't care how it works. She looked at me. I just didn't want Grandma to be hurt. My throat tightened. And you told the truth, I said. Yes, that's all you needed to do. She swallowed. But I didn't think it would destroy everything. I stepped toward her. It didn't destroy everything, I said softly. It revealed what was already broken. She looked around the room, at her father, at her aunt, at the people she had grown up trusting, and she understood. The same way I had. Daniel closed the file. This concludes the formal portion of this meeting, he said. Further communication regarding the trust will be handled through my office. That was it. No dramatic ending, no raised voices, just a quiet line drawn in permanent ink. Ethan stood, slowly. Lauren followed. Mark grabbed his coat without another word. Vanessa lingered a moment longer, her eyes scanning the room one last time, as if searching for something she could still control. There was nothing left. They moved toward the door. Olivia stayed beside me. Ethan paused before leaving. He turned back. Mom. I met his eyes. I'm sorry. The words hung there, fragile, late, real. I nodded once. I know. He waited as if expecting something more. Forgiveness, reversal, relief. I gave him none of those things, because some apologies don't undo the outcome. They only acknowledge it. He nodded slowly. Then he left. Lauren followed, tears still falling. Mark didn't look back. Vanessa was the last to go. She met my gaze one final time, and for the first time, there was no strategy in her eyes, only loss. Then she turned and walked out. The door closed, and just like that, it was over. Or at least, the part they controlled was. I stood in the quiet office, Olivia beside me, Daniel across the desk. And for the first time in weeks, I could breathe. Not because everything was fixed, but because everything was finally true. The drive home felt longer than it should have, not because of distance, because of silence. Olivia followed me in her car again, just as she had before. This time, she didn't pull into the driveway right away. She waited until I stepped out of my car and turned toward the house. Grandma, she called softly. I turned back. She got out and walked toward me slowly, as if she wasn't sure whether she should speak or stay quiet. You don't have to say anything, I told her gently. I know, she said, but I want to. I nodded. Then say it. She hesitated. I feel guilty. The word hung between us. Why? Because everything just fell apart in there. Because of me. I shook my head immediately. No, but I recorded them. I told you. You told the truth, I said. Her eyes filled again. And the truth hurt them. The truth didn't hurt them, I said quietly. Their choices did. She swallowed. But it still feels like I caused it. I stepped closer and placed my hands on her shoulders. Olivia listened to me carefully. She looked at me. You didn't break this family, I said. You revealed what it had already become. Her breath caught. That sentence settled into her slowly, carefully, like something she didn't want to believe but needed to. After a moment, she nodded. I don't want to take anything from them. I know. I don't even want the money. I know that too. She frowned slightly. Then what happens? I looked at the house, at the porch, at the windows that had seen everything. At some point, I said we decide what matters more, what we inherit, or what we become. She didn't answer, but I could see her thinking, and that was enough. We went inside together. The house welcomed us back with its familiar quiet, but something about it felt different now. Not empty, not heavy, clear, as if something long buried had finally been brought into the light. I walked into the living room and sat in my chair. Olivia sat across from me. For a while we didn't speak. Then she asked softly, "Do you think they'll come back?" "Yes," I said. "Why?" "Because people don't let go of something they believe belongs to them." Not easily. She looked down. "Do you want them to come back?" The question surprised me. I thought about it. About Ethan, about Lauren, about the children I had raised, and the people they had become. "I don't know," I admitted. "That's okay." "Yes," I said. "It is." Later that evening, the answer came. Ethan called. I knew it was him before I even looked at the screen. Some part of me had been expecting it. I answered. "Mom." His voice sounded different, quieter. "Ethan." There was a pause. "I have been thinking. I imagine you have. I didn't handle things right. No denial, no argument, just that." "I agree," I said. Another pause. "I thought I was protecting what Dad left us. You were protecting what you thought you deserved." The correction was gentle, but it landed. "I didn't think—" He started, then stopped. "What didn't you think? That you would see me like that?" The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. "Like what?" "Like someone trying to take something from you." I closed my eyes briefly. "You weren't trying to take something from me," I said. "You were trying to take control." "That's not the same." "No," I agreed. "It's worse." Silence. Heavy. Honest. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I know. I mean it this time. I know that too." Another pause. Then, "What do we do now?" That question again. But this time, it sounded different. Less like a negotiation. More like someone who had run out of answers. "I don't know," I said. He let out a slow breath. "I don't want to lose you over this." "You didn't lose me," I said quietly. "You lost something else." What I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Trust." The word settled into the space between us, and he didn't argue with it. "Can I come by tomorrow?" he asked. I looked at Olivia. She watched me carefully. Not afraid, not hopeful, just present. "Yes," I said finally. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." After I hung up, Olivia spoke. "You're letting him come back. I'm letting him try." "That's not the same." "No," I said. "It's not." The next morning, Lauren came too. Not together. Separately. That mattered. Lauren stood at the door longer than Ethan had, as if she wasn't sure she deserved to knock. When I opened it, she looked smaller somehow. Less certain. "Hi," she said. "Hi, I brought coffee." I glanced at the cup in her hand. From the bakery your father liked. That caught me. A small thing, but real. Come in, I said. She stepped inside carefully like a guest instead of an owner. Ethan arrived 10 minutes later. He didn't walk straight in this time. He waited, knocked once, then waited again. I opened the door. He met my eyes. May I come in? That was new? Yes, I said. They stood in the living room together, not side by side, not united, just present. I don't expect anything to go back to normal, Lauren said. Good, I replied, because it won't. Ethan nodded. I just want to understand how to fix what we can. I studied him for a long moment. You can't fix everything I said. I know, but you can change what happens next. He swallowed. How I looked at Olivia, then back at them. By remembering that I'm still here. Silence. Not uncomfortable, just real. Lauren wiped her eyes. I forgot that. Yes, I said. You did. Ethan stepped forward slightly. We forgot who you are. I nodded. Yes, I said. You did. And for the first time since everything began. They didn't argue. They didn't defend. They didn't explain. They just stood there, facing the truth. And maybe learning from it. A year passed more quietly than I expected. Not empty, not lonely, just different. Time has a way of settling things that emotions cannot. The sharp edges of that day in Daniel's office didn't disappear, but they softened. Not because what happened became less real, but because life continued moving forward, whether we were ready or not. And I was ready. More than I had ever been. The Porter Senior Support Fund was no longer just a clause in a legal document. It became something real. Something alive. Daniel and I worked together to bring it into existence just as Richard had envisioned. The first time I sat in that office reviewing applications from elderly men and women who had been left alone, neglected, or quietly pushed aside by their families, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was purpose. Faces replaced numbers. Stories replaced assumptions. A woman in her 80s whose son had moved her into a facility and stopped visiting. A retired teacher whose savings had been drained by a relative she trusted. A widower who hadn't spoken to his children in years after they fought over his home. I saw pieces of myself in all of them, but I also saw something else. Resilience, dignity, the quiet strength of people who had been underestimated. And I knew with a certainty that felt almost sacred that Richard had been right. This was the real legacy. Not money, not property, but impact. Olivia became part of it too. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. She came with me to meetings, listened to stories, helped organize files, spoke gently to people who needed someone to hear them. She never acted like she deserved anything, and that was exactly why she did. One afternoon, as we sat in the small office space we had set up for the fund, she looked at me and said, I think this is what Grandpa meant. I smiled. Yes, I said. I think it is. She nodded slowly. He didn't just protect you. He made something good out of something bad. That's what love does, I said, when it's real. At home, things changed too. Not all at once, not perfectly, but they changed. Ethan came back. Not immediately, not easily, but consistently. The first time he showed up again, it was awkward. He stood in the doorway like a stranger, unsure whether he was welcome. But he didn't bring papers. He didn't bring plans. He brought groceries. Just things you might need, he said. I let him in. We didn't talk about the trust that day. We talked about small things. Weather, neighbors, old memories that felt safer to touch. But something had shifted. He wasn't trying to manage me anymore. He was trying to reconnect. And that mattered. Lauren came too, more often than Ethan, quieter than before. She didn't ask about money, didn't ask about documents. She asked how I was sleeping, if I needed help in the garden, if I wanted company. At first, I didn't trust it. Not because I thought she was lying, because I didn't know if she had changed. But change isn't something you prove in a moment. It's something you live, day by day, choice by choice, and slowly, carefully. They began to show it. Not perfectly, not always, but enough. Mark stayed distant. Vanessa stayed silent. They appeared less and less in my life, like characters whose roles had ended but who hadn't quite left the stage yet. And I was okay with that. Some relationships don't heal. They simply fade. And that's not always a tragedy. Sometimes it's clarity. One evening, about 10 months after that meeting, I received a letter. Handwritten, from Ethan. He didn't bring it in person. He mailed it. That alone told me something. I sat at the kitchen table and opened it slowly. His handwriting had always been messy. That hadn't changed. But the words had. Mom, I've been trying to find the right way to say this, and I don't think there is one, so I'm just going to say it the way it is. I was wrong. Not just about the money, not just about the house, about you. I stopped seeing you as my mother and started seeing you as something I needed to manage. And I don't know exactly when that happened, but I know I hate that it did. I can't undo what I said. I can't undo what I tried to do. But I can choose who I am now. And I want to be better than that version of me. Not for the inheritance, not for the money, but for you. If you'll let me. Love, Ethan. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and placed it beside Richard's old mug pieces. A fragment of something broken. A sign of something trying to be rebuilt. Later that night, I sat on the porch swing, the same one Richard had built. The wood creaked softly beneath me the way it always had. The air was warm, the kind of late summer evening that feels like a pause between chapters. Olivia sat beside me. We didn't speak for a while. Then she asked, "Do you think they've changed?" I thought about Ethan's letter, about Lauren's quiet visits, about the way they looked at me now, not as something to control, but as someone they had nearly lost. I think I said slowly, "They're learning." That's enough. For now, I said. Yes. She nodded, and we sat there together watching the sky darken, not waiting for anything, not fearing anything, just present. Because in the end, I understood something I hadn't fully seen before. My family had fought over my estate before I died. They had tried to divide what they thought I owned, but they missed the one thing that mattered most. Not the money, not the house, not the inheritance. They missed the truth. That a legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you stand for while you're still here. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like mine was exactly where it needed to be.